City of LA protections. The City of LA protections and the eviction defense resources available to Angelenos. My name is Gladys. I'm with LAHD and I'll be conducting the presentation.
Hello again. It seems that we're having a bit of technical difficulties. We'll resolve the problem in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I apologize for that. I got completely kicked out of Zoom as I was introducing myself. Okay, this presentation is being recorded. Just wanting to announce that, and toward the end of the presentation, there will be a survey. We ask you to stick around and complete the survey. Thank you. Okay, so this presentation is going to cover the City of LA protections. We're going to briefly touch base on the end of the state deferred deferment on rents under Assembly Bill 832, which is state law. And we're going to touch upon the City of LA Eviction Defense Program. It's important to note that this is material is for general informational purposes only, and it is not intended to constitute legal advice. Okay, so just again, for reiteration, these protections that I will be going over is for the city of Los Angeles, which is located in the county of Los Angeles. There may be some at times where tenants are not aware whether they reside within the city or not. So you can definitely narrow it down by noticing if your your utility bill is from LADWP, that it would mean that you're located in the city of LA, or you can research under zemas.lacity.org and input your address, and it will provide information on the left side of the margin whether or not you're located in the city of LA and whether or not your unit is subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. Okay, the City of LA COVID protections are still in place. They began March 4th of 2020 because the mayor declared a local emergency period, and they are still ongoing. In the city of Los Angeles, a landlord cannot move to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent if it is COVID related. So if the economic impact is due to COVID, landlords at this point in the city of LA cannot move forward with an eviction. Tenants must pay all of that owed rent by no later than May 1st of 2023, or by the end of 12 months after this local emergency period expires. So it's we don't have finality yet. That or is very much relevant because May 1, 2023 is stated in the state law. But because we're still in our local emergency period, that time frame is still will be 12 months after it expires. So since we're still in it, we don't know when it expired, and so therefore we don't know when that 12-month period will lapse. But at no point in this continuum can it exceed past May 1st of 2023 per state law. Tenants are not required to provide documentation to the landlord to support their inability to pay, but it is likely that you will have to produce documents in court if the landlord challenges this economic impact related to COVID. So you're highly encouraged to keep the documentation and any evidence you have to establish that your inability to pay is related to COVID. Tenants are not required to sign repayment agreements. If you choose to enter into that a mutual agreement with the landlord, that is definitely something you can opt to do, but you're not required to sign it, a repayment agreement. Second point here is that at this point, landlords cannot move forward with a no-fault eviction. What does that mean? Typically, it's when the owner wants to move in into the unit, or their parents or their children want to move into a unit, or they want to install a resident manager, or they want to remove the property from the rental market, which is known as an Ellis type of eviction. At this moment, all of these type of evictions, which are no-fault evictions, are not permitted because we are still in the city local emergency period. Okay, third point there is that a landlord may not evict a tenant due to the presence of unauthorized occupants, pets, or nuisance related to COVID-19. So that could be a result of family having to move in who may have been impacted, or maybe someone was ill and needed care. Same with pets or any nuisance related to COVID, which could typically be noise related or wear and tear because family had to move in because they were COVID impacted. The fourth point is that landlords may not charge interest rate on late fees for any unpaid rent that's related to COVID. So these are all the City of LA protections for all residential units in the city. Single family dwelling, condominiums, apartments that were recently built, all units in the City of LA. Okay, now per the local ordinance, a landlord is required to serve a COVID-19 renter protections fact sheet, otherwise just known as protections notice. Per ordinance 186606, the landlords must provide a protections notice whenever they issue a eviction notice. So there's bullets there of different protections that I just highlighted. And then that second page there is the tenant notification to the landlord of their inability to pay rent. So if you are unable to pay rent and you want to declare that to the landlord, you may choose to complete this second page of this form in the protections fact sheet and submit it to the landlord so that they are aware that the reason you're not paying rent is because you're declaring the COVID impact. These are translated in numerous languages: Spanish, Korean, Russian, Armenian, Tagalog, Chinese, and Farsi. And they're all available on our website. Okay, now I'm going to switch to protections that are available to rent stabilized units, so commonly known as rent control. RSO is the acronym for Rent Stabilization Ordinance. And its intention is, well, rather what it does is that it stabilizes rents. So there's certain rent caps for rent increases. It provides just cause eviction protections, as well as requirement for relocation assistance for those no-fault evictions I touched upon earlier. And so in order to be subject to this ordinance and to its protections, it has to be a residential unit in the City of LA where that certificate of occupancy, if you see that image on the right side, it's basically a permit that's allowed for it to be used for residential purposes. That had to have been issued on or before October 1st of 1978. So if a residential unit meets this criteria, then there's different protections afforded to those units. So I'm going to highlight these in this next slide. At this point, a landlord cannot assess an increase, an annual increase, or any increase rather, for 1 year until after the local emergency period expires. And rent increases do not accumulate. So so as to say that if they weren't able to assess an increase in 2020, after the local emergency period expired, and therefore in 2021, those cannot be accumulated, so that if and when this order lifts, which it will, at some point in the future, they can accumulate and compound that increase in the future. So that's not going to be permitted. They cannot charge interest rate or late fees, as I mentioned earlier on the slide, for all City of LA protections. Similarly, for the units subject to the rent stabilization ordinance, that is not permitted. What landlords can assess, they can collect, is the surcharges for the rent stabilization ordinance and for the SCEP, which is our systematic code enforcement program. Every year, the landlord is required to pay this fee, and that may thereafter assess a portion of it to the tenant with proper notice. So those are permitted as long as that proper notification is issued. The collection of just and reasonable, it can happen at any time when it's approved by LHD. So if a landlord does choose to submit an application and documentation is submitted for review, and the department has evaluated that application and has decided that a permanent increase is permitted, then the landlord can move forward with that type of increase at any time, as long as they give that proper notice. But again, if and only if the department approves it. That's just and reasonable. And that final point there is about primary renovation. So if you want to do a pass-through on primary renovation increase or seismic or capital improvement surcharges, you can submit that application, submit your documentation for review, as there's time limits that are associated with these, but you cannot move forward to collect that approved increase until 60 days after the local emergency period expires. Now, as I said in this earlier slide, I referenced the LADWP bill as a flag. If you're located in the city of, if you receive that bill, you're located in the city of LA. I also provided the ZEMIS website. There is also a text line. So on the bottom left of the slide, you can text the letters RSO to that a text line, 855-880-7368, and it will prompt you with some questions, namely your address, zip code, and then you will receive an auto reply that will send you additional information, or will likely tell you if your unit is subject to the rent ordinance. And if there's still some confusion or some further inquiry, you can call our hotline. Okay, so now I'm going to briefly touch upon the state bills. It's been a journey and an evolution of different state laws. It started with State Assembly Bill 3088, and then it morphed into SB 91, and then it was further extended by AB 832, and that was the final state law, and it expired on September 30th. 2021, as far as certain protections, and other protections are still ongoing. The rent deferment and the eviction protections for the city, however, those do continue. And we will be repeating this, as the running theme here is the local emergency period is still in place. So those protections are again only in place for tenants that are COVID impacted. Okay, so in summary, what the state bill protected was this deferment of rent for this 25%, right? We all heard that in the news. It was just, information that was flowing for this cutoff of September 30th. So what it did say is that a tenant financially impacted by COVID can never be evicted for non-payment of rent due from March 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, if the tenant did the following two, which was to provide the declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress within 15 days of service of that notice from the landlord, and that the tenant paid 25% of the rent from September 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021 by no later than September 30th, 2021. So obviously that time has expired, but if you met these two components, then you could never be evicted. You were permanently protected. So we do encourage that you seek legal advice if you have specific facts about your housing matter, because that legal advice, well, the facts could alter the outcome of whatever legal advice you may receive. So we highly encourage that if you have questions revolving around these two elements under state law, that you seek legal advice. Okay. So what happens to state eviction protections for tenants impacted by COVID-19 after September 30th, 2021? So we are back to a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. It was 15-day notice during the evolution of these different state bills, and that has expired. And so now we've reverted to the 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. And landlords should seek legal advice on any new notice requirements under state law. Tenants can submit a declaration of COVID-19. Tenants cannot submit a declaration of COVID-19 financial distress, and special rules apply. What I meant earlier is that there have been questions that have arisen as to whether or not you need to submit that 15-day financial distress now in order to avail yourselves of the protections that were afforded under state law prior. That is a legal question that should be posed to an attorney. There's a modified process for unlawful detainer actions based on non-payment of rent between October 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2022. And it's important to note that owners must apply for rental assistance before going to court. Landlords who fail to apply for rental assistance may face challenges in court proceedings that I would imagine a tenant's attorney would raise if there isn't evidence that rental assistance was applied. Okay, next slide. What happens to city eviction protections for tenants financially impacted by COVID-19 after September 30th, 2021? So as stated earlier, and we'll keep repeating this, city eviction protections continue until the end of the local emergency period, and it is still ongoing. The city will allow, or under the LAMC, it allows tenants up to 12 months to repay COVID-19 rental debt after the end of the local emergency period, or May 1st, 2023, whichever date comes first. Again, I alluded to that a hypo earlier, and we will continue to discuss this time frame of the 12 months. At the end of the repayment period, tenants must pay the full amount, or they may face evictions if they did not also follow state law. The applicability of local rule protections is fact specific, and ultimately the courts will decide. So again, please seek legal advice. Okay, so state and local laws, they do not forgive rent. It's must be paid. So, but even if tenants cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent, tenants will eventually have to pay this rent out. So it's quite important that everyone that is aware that the rental assistance program for the state is still ongoing, and that you visit Housing is Key to apply for rental assistance. Now, Los Angeles, unlike the state that we covered earlier, Los Angeles City law did not and does not require payment of the 25% to be temporarily protected, from eviction. But the tenants who did pay the 25% and provided those declarations, they received permanent eviction protection, so can never, ever be evicted. The landlord may pursue other remedy under civil law for payment of that rental debt, but at least the tenant would not run the risk of an eviction, where you are then running the risk of having to leave your home if the court rules so. The City of LA protections are in place, again, during the local emergency period. And, we covered this deferment. Tenants will have to pay all rent that they deferred during the emergency period by no later than May 1st, 2023, or by the end of 12 months after local emergency period expires. Again, this is now the third time that I've repeated this, but it seems to be an ongoing question. And for the city of LA, that phrase is, you'll be hearing it over and over as a full thought, because the local emergency period is still in place. And so that date is constantly moving, but there is an end date, which is May 1st, 2023 per state law. If the local emergency period in the city of LA doesn't expire before that 12-month period. Okay, now I'm going to move on now from the protections to talk about a different type of service that's provided to Angelenos, and that is our new eviction defense program. Its full name is COVID Response Eviction Defense Program. It launched on July 1st, 2021, and it offers 3 different services. First bullet there is providing an emergency legal assistance through a consortium of legal service providers. Second is public awareness. So there's a multilingual Know Your Rights campaign that is available on the stayhousedla.org website. That is the platform where you can both obtain and apply for and obtain legal assistance, and maybe join in on webinars for legal clinics, or simply join in on a webinar so that you're up to date with changes in the law. And that third prong there is also providing resources to families through our Family Source Centers, which is intended to promote housing stability. So to be eligible for this program, you need to be a City of Los Angeles resident. Your household has to be at or below 80% of the area median income, and you have to be impacted by COVID-19 as a requirement. Asterisk there is to stress that any assistance needed has nothing to do with immigration status. So if anyone out there feels that this is a reason not to reach out for help, please do. I can stress that it has nothing to do with it. It's completely, regardless of immigration status, you can avail yourself of the the services offered under the Eviction Defense Program. Okay, so as I stated earlier, if you are in need of emergency legal assistance because the landlord has moved forward, though these city protections are available, the landlord has moved forward to file an unlawful detainer action. And now you need assistance because you have to file a timely answer. You're strongly encouraged to go to Stay Housed LA website, which is the stayhousedla.org. And you will be routed to a page where you can get information on, rather a link to get legal help. So it's right here where this arrow, where I'm got my cursor. If you have received an unlawful detainer and you need to answer it timely and you need legal assistance, you are encouraged to go to Stay Housed LA, click on this Get Legal Help box. It will then transfer you to a page where you have to answer several questions, namely your identity, your address, etc. And then it's going to route you behind the scenes to a different legal service provider who will reach out for you and initiate conversation as to your housing matter. You're not in that situation, but you want to be at the forefront of what's happening. You can click on Know Your Rights, and it'll send you to a link to inform yourself of state law, county protections, and City of LA protections. Again, this particular webinar I'm doing is specific to City of LA residents, but if you have any family or friends that live in the county and are also in need of legal assistance or information on county rights, they would, you certainly click on Know Your Rights and go to the county page. And then finally, this third box here is Find a Workshop. So you can join in and listen to different webinars in different languages, again, to be aware of your rights, of your housing rights. And then the phone number. Obviously, we're all on Zoom and have access to a computer. But again, if you have family and friends that are in need of assistance and do not have access to computer, the number is 888-694-8255. That's to the Stay Housed LA platform, and to begin or initiate rather inquiry or legal assistance over the phone if necessary. Okay. Now I'm going to morph into information on rental assistance, rather rent assistance. If you applied for rental assistance from the city of Los Angeles in the past, you can check the status of your application at housing2.lacity.org. In a couple of pages, and I would say 3 or 4 pages, you'll be provided with a phone number. Oh, there it is. It's actually on the bottom. State, no, that's state, excuse me. I'll give you the number for the city of LA. If you have an open application and have further inquiry as to your the status of your application. Okay, back to the second prong here. Angelinos who have not received notifications of a pending or approved application, or who have not previously applied with the city, you are strongly urged to visit housingiskey.com to apply for rental assistance. This timeframe has not lapsed on applying, and the services are available, and we encourage you to apply before this money runs out. State's application, well, it is open for both tenants and landlords, and priority will be given to City of LA residents who originally applied back in April 30th of 2021. Now, if information is available through the state ARIP hotline at Housing is Key, and that's at 833-430-2122. And again, that is also in multiple languages. Okay. Now, this slide is a lot of information, but it's intended to give you options if you have to reach out to the Los Angeles Housing Department for any questions. You can submit inquiries 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to that first web address. You can report violations of COVID-19 renter protections by calling our hotline. So let's say that the landlord is has issued a notice, whether it's an eviction notice or a rent increase notice, and you know for certain you're in a rent stabilized unit, or it's a buyout offer and you're not sure if it's proper or doesn't meet all the elements of a proper buyout offer, you can consider filing a complaint with us, with the Los Angeles Housing Department, and you can do that by calling our hotline at 866-557-7368, or you can certainly file a complaint online at that second web address here. And if you want to learn more about your COVID-19 renter protections for Angelinos, you can certainly visit this final or this link here where I'm pointing my cursor at lacity.org highlights renter protections. Okay, excuse me. I have a red line, a bold red line going through down the middle here to repeat. And I can't say how important it is to stress that if you receive an unlawful detainer summons, which looks like this image on the bottom right, it'll be a summons issued by the court and it'll say unlawful detainer eviction. If you receive this document or any court documents, you're encouraged to immediately go to the stayhousedla.org website to get legal help, immediate legal help. Or call again, their number is 888-694-0040. These are other resources of website links to provide to you so that you can do any additional research. So for City of LA, we have the information for the city attorney, who has also posted information on landlord-tenant rights. We have the state rental assistance application, which is housingiskey.com. And if you need rental assistance, that you are encouraged to apply immediately. And if you want to learn about the city rental assistance application status with us, that you would go to housing2.lacity.org. Okay, we've created a slide of frequently asked questions or frequent questions. So I'm just going to read those out loud. First question is, what can a tenant do if they get a notice to pay rent or quit? they're encouraged to contact LHD, file a complaint, and we have a team of investigators that can review the notice. You can also seek legal advice, and you can apply for rental assistance. How can a landlord recover unpaid rent? Follow city and state law, seek legal advice, apply for rental assistance, and under city rules, if a tenant is impacted by COVID, the owner will have to wait 12 months until the end of the local emergency period, or May 1st, 2023, whichever date arrives first, before pursuing an eviction against a tenant for past due rent. Under state rules, if the tenant gave the declaration of COVID-19 financial distress for that time period and they paid the 25%, they can never be evicted for non-payment. Where can tenants and landlords get more info about renters assistance? So here's additional information. Well, rather the same one, it's now on a page. So if you want to check on the status of an existing application, you can do that at housing2.lacity.org. And for those with open city applications who have questions, you can call that ARIP hotline at 833-373-0587, available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. through 8 p.m. Now that second link is for the state. You can go to housingiskey.com for the state rental assistance program. And again, that number is 833-430-2122. Okay, has the renters assistance program, I don't know what it says there because I have a live transcript. Let's see, the state's program continues to accept applications. Okay, has the renters assistance program closed? The state's program continues to accept applications. So no, it has not closed. The state's program continues to accept applications until they distribute all the available funds. The city will no longer accept new applications, but continues to process the applications that were determined to be eligible prior to September 1st of 2021. So if you receive that email then and you have questions about that pending application, then reach out to the city. If your application falls outside of that time frame or you did not, then you're encouraged to apply to the state program for rental assistance. Can a landlord apply late fees for unpaid rent? We covered that earlier. No, not for the months covered under the local emergency period. So again, that's from March 4th, 2021 and it's ongoing because we're still in that time period. So if you receive a notice for late fees for unpaid rent or any interest charges, please consider filing a complaint with the housing department so we can look into that notice. Can a landlord evict a tenant for other reasons? Okay, all rental units in LA require just cause reason to evict during the local emergency period. So landlords may not evict a tenant for no fault. So I suppose that a landlord can evict a tenant for other reasons, yes. So if it's just cause, if it's illegal activity, or if there's a breach of contract, or it's nuisance, it's not related to COVID, a landlord may pursue that option in court and obviously would have to prove it to get a judgment in their favor. But landlords cannot move forward with a no fault. So those are the owner occupancy, installation of resident manager, or ELIS, that we talked about earlier, or maybe you receive a notice because your mom moved in. That is not permitted to move forward with an eviction for an unauthorized occupant at this time. Okay, final question on that slide. If the tenant was not impacted by COVID, can they stop paying rent? The eviction protections are only for tenants who are not able to pay rent because they were impacted by COVID. So yeah, you can't answer it in the affirmative, or otherwise it's simply to say that if you're not impacted by COVID, then it sort of begs the question, why are you not paying your rent? And that's a personal choice if you want to take that risk. But the protections that are in place are for tenants who are COVID impacted financially, economically, and can establish that. So if you are impacted by COVID, you're strongly encouraged to keep all that information. Any letters you got from your employer, emails, etc., to establish if the landlord, nevertheless, with all these protections, decides to move forward with the unlawful detainer filing, you can present all this evidence to the court and utilize it as an affirmative defense. Okay, that is the end of the slides. That's the end of the presentation. I do believe we have a survey. I think we're going to work on getting that up, and then we will give you an opportunity to complete the survey, and then we'll take some questions.
Good afternoon once again. We are taking some a moment to allow people to answer the survey. We'll be answering some questions. I know we have about 5 hands up. We will ask you to unmute yourself and allow you to ask a question. Please keep the questions general and related to the presentation. Also, we already opened a chat. If you don't want to ask a question verbally, you can type up the question. And once again, please stay on topic and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Thank you, and we'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Thank you for being patient. I will be asking Leo to please unmute himself. Hello, Leo.
Hello, this is Leo.
Yes.
Yes, hi. How you doing today, guys?
Well, and you?
Good, good. I just had a quick question. What's going to happen after local emergency period expires? Will a landlord then be able to issue a 3-day notice, like it was pre-COVID?
Do you mean to pay rent?
Yeah, so, just to give a hypothetical, if it expired at the end of this month, right, October, and if the tenant had not paid rent for November, okay, let's say, and the landlord then issue a 3-day notice for the rent that's due in November, just like they used to do pre-COVID.
Okay, so the question is that if the owner, let's say hypothetically, the local emergency period ends on October 31st.
Yeah.
Would the owner be able to issue a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit for the rent that is due for November,
Yeah.
right? Would the owner be able to do that? As far as we, based on what we have at the moment, yes.
Okay.
The local emergency period would end and the owner would be able to issue a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit.
Okay, but until then, if you issue a 3-day notice for October, then is the tenant has the ability to claim COVID, right?
Yes, currently,
Right, with the
due to the
declaration.
local emergency period, the owners cannot evict a tenant for non-payment of rent if the tenant was affected by COVID.
Right. And they have to give a declaration for that.
Yes,
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
thank you. I will be asking Sean to unmute him, to unmute. Sean.
Hi there, thank you. If there's a owner on a lease with a tenant and the lease ends in a few months in 2022, and the owner wants to sell the property, is there any issue then of asking the tenant to move and not renewing the lease? The tenant has been paying rent, they've not had any COVID issues.
Okay, Gustavo, I'll take it. Okay, I'm sorry. So the question is really revolves around evicting the tenant.
It's not evicting, it's the lease will be over. There's a lease and the lease will be over in 2022 in June. And the owner doesn't want to renew the lease or go month to month. The owner wants to sell the property. And the tenant has been paying rent and has not had any COVID issues.
Okay, and this is a single family home or is it a rent stabilized unit?
It's a townhouse, newer townhouse, so it's not rent control.
I see. Okay, I can't. So the question is it permissible to sell the house? Because
yes, to sell the property and not continue to rent out to this particular tenant.
okay, I am not going to answer that question. I encourage you to seek legal advice. One, it's not a rent stabilized unit, and two, I don't know when the local emergency period is going to expire. So since this goes into March of 2022, anything can happen between now and then.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next would be Joaquin Camilo.
Hi, how you doing? I appreciate you guys having this this webinar. Are there any resources for landlords? I mean, this seems like super one-sided. I understand people are hurting. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but landlords are kind of hurting too, you know, with really bad tenants who are sort of abusing these laws. And so I know that there's a lot of resources for tenants, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of resources for landlords. I mean, is there like a councilman that we can talk to? Like, who wrote this? Like, it's fine, it's great, but at the same time, like, it's not helping the landlords at all. Is there a resource for landlords that we can tap into here?
No, I understand the concern and the frustration. I would encourage you to go to your local council member. I don't know which district you live in. I mean, this is obviously drafted by city attorney and approved by city council. And it is intended to mitigate to mitigate displacement. But I'm not naive to believe that there may be tactics utilized that may that is quite can be damaging or is damaging to landlords. If the reason why this law was enacted to protect tenants are not in fact impacted by COVID, which is the reason what this law was designed to protect. You can visit the apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. There's also webinars that landlords can visit. You can also go to Stay Housed LA. There's also landlord information at Stay Housed LA that you could visit to avail yourself of that information.
Yeah.
Again, no fault
And-
evictions are not permissible, but
that's the thing that
at
gets me.
fault.
If we're willing to like pay the X amount of dollars to get them out, if there's enough money for them to relocate, like why not? Like, I don't mean any disrespect, because I know that there's a lot of people hurting, and I'm not, like you said, naive to that point either. But at the same time, like, it seems really heavy-handed, and it seems like the government, whoever, is commandeering our own property and telling us what we can and can't do with. And like, we have a really bad tenant, like really bad, like one of the nightmare cases, and we can't get her out, and she's just using the system. And so anyways, I don't want to talk about me, but this seems like super one-sided, and our hands are tied now because of this. So I guess, you know, and we have also a just and reasonable pending with you guys for like the last 3 years. And it's like, there's no help for landlords here. And I think that maybe if you can get anything out of this, is to offer something for the landlords, a webinar for the like something. I know you're in the business of housing people, but at the same time, it's still a business, you know, for landlords. And literally, like, you know, mortgages, and landlords are going to lose their houses. Like, it's not a pretty sight, you know, for landlords either. So I just think that you guys should kind of focus just a little bit more on landlords too, you know?
No, I understand that. Thank you for sharing that. I do want you to know that that concern has not fallen on deaf ears. There's mayoral concern about landlords that just bought their property right in the cusp of what would soon become a local emergency period. And maybe we're just wrapping up transactions and clearing things up in their lives to move in. And then this law becomes, is in effect. And there is a lot of landlords that we're aware of that are in a predicament because they cannot move into their homes. So Mayor is aware of this and is visiting this issue.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry to take up so much of your time. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person would be Cameron.
Hi, this is Cameron. Thanks for the very nice webinar, very informative. I'm actually a landlord just outside of city of LA, so it would fall under county. And my situation is that I have a tenant who hasn't paid rent since the start of this issue, COVID issue. And then now she's still not paying rent, stating that state moratorium still is in effect. And I have been looking, trying to find some official text explaining where the state mandate stands, but I'm unsuccessful. Can you tell me where I can go to find an official statement so that I can copy her on it, and maybe we will start getting rent?
Okay, I apologize. I was not able to unmute my mic. Okay, so you're, if I understand this correctly, you're just right outside the city and you're in the county. I would first encourage you to visit the Department of Consumer Affairs, LA Consumer Affairs Department. They have a multitude of webinars. Department of Consumer and Business Affairs for the County of Los Angeles. Excuse me, I couldn't say the full name. There's a multitude of information there for residents, and because it's a property that's in the county, I don't feel comfortable speaking on it because I know that there's been an extension of county rules as far as eviction protections, and I'm not fully versed in it. So that would be my first place to go. And then you can obviously see the California websites. Let me see if I could get you the link and I can pop them in this chat for the Zoom. So please hang tight. This is Tamron. I will put it there for everyone to see, just in case another landlord out there has a question for county. But I'll give you the link for the LA County to residents and specifically for landlord tenant issues, and then the link for the state. So just stand by, Tamron. I'm going to try and do this as I'm answering questions, but don't hang up until you get that website.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, guys, ready for the next one?
Okay, I will keep Cameron with his hand up so that we could remember. Or was there? I didn't check the chat. Did you already? Okay. Next we have ROC.
Hello?
Apologies. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering about if we have a rent application with the state, and then we have the November, December as future rent. Do we have to pay that, or is it deferred since we have an application with the state? Come November 1st, will we have to pay that November 1st, or is it deferred too, since it's already with the state?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to formulate that question. So you live in the city of Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay, and you're please elaborate.
Oh, I put in a state application for future rent for October, November, December, but I had to pay October since my application is still pending. And they say it takes like a month or so. And I was wondering, do I have to pay November in a few weeks on November 1st? Or am I protected against eviction since I already have the application in to the state?
Right. So you have you live in the city of Los Angeles and you cannot pay rent because you're COVID impacted, then you are protected. If you, for
November?
for rent during the local emergency period. Remember, local emergency period started May 4th of 2020 and it's ongoing. So those protections I talked about earlier in the slides for Angelenos is still ongoing. So if you cannot pay because you're COVID impacted, then the landlord cannot move forward to evict. On top of that, if a landlord wanted to file an unlawful detainer to move forward in the judicial process to get you evicted, they're going to have to prove that rental assistance has been applied, that you've applied for rental assistance, and that there's been a denial. And obviously yours is not denied. It's ongoing. Like the review is ongoing. So it was going to be very difficult and pointless, really, for a landlord to move forward to evict you if you've applied for rental assistance. Okay, so if they're evicting you for non-payment and you've applied for rental assistance for the whole point of getting that money to pay them, which is the basis for their eviction notice, then it would be pointless. They simply have to wait until this process concludes and the state pays that money. So that was a mouthful, but to answer your question, yes, you're protected. If you get an eviction notice for November rent, then I encourage you to come to the Los Angeles Housing Department at that hotline that I gave earlier. And Gus, if you don't mind, you can share screen and put that page again for the how to contact LAHD, please. And call the hotline so that you could file a complaint if your landlord issues an eviction notice for November for non-payment.
What was that number? 557?
Yes, it's 866-557-7368.
7368. Can they file a suit in small claims come November 1st, though?
Yes. So according to state law, if a landlord wants to move forward to collect the debt portion, right, for all the time frame that you owe back since going back to March, if that's the case for you, the landlord is the state does allow a landlord to file a small claims action.
Oh, they can. Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll next is oh wow. Util? Hello? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, my apologies. Go
No,
ahead.
it's all good. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. My question is relatively simple. I just recently got approved for the months of rent that I was impacted by from COVID-19. And I was just wondering, what are the next steps? You know, because I would hope to just be able to have the funds released so I can pay it, since I'm now in a position to pay my rent moving forward. I don't know how long this is supposed to take. Is someone going to call me or to receive an email to get the funds? Am I going to receive a check? I just don't know how that's going to work per se. So I was just wondering what happens next in this instance.
Yes, and you applied to the city ERA program or to the state?
I applied to both, but I think whichever was the most recent, which I believe is the city, correct? I just applied to the most recent one in September when it just got when it was instituted. I applied to that one. So
Yeah, that's the state one.
okay. So yeah.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to contact the Housing is Key number. I'm going to scroll the screen to that number.
Okay.
And I'm going to highlight, it's right here where the cursor is. Whoops. Right here, it's this last one. I don't know if you see my cursor. It says
Yeah.
housingiskey.com. And this is the phone number here. It will 833-430-2122. I'm not aware of the intricacies of the state program. If you are even going to see that money, you're a tenant. So it may be a payment that's routed directly to the landlord and you may not see that, but you might get a sort of like a receipt, if you will, to, you know, have as evidence and proof that landlord was paid. So I don't know the facts or the minutia of the state program
Okay.
to be able to answer your questions. So I'd encourage you to call that number and be very patient, as you can imagine, a lot of Californians are calling to try and avail themselves of the program. But that would be the number. And also visit housingiskey.com, and there's an FAQ page on that state page, and maybe your answers can be, maybe your question can be answered by reading through the FAQs.
Okay, so I'll just call that number. Yeah, I just don't. It was actually, you know, relatively quick, I guess, because I already applied before. I just want to be able to have that taken care of so I could just pay, you know, moving forward, since I'm in a position to actually pay. Like, I have a job now. I don't want to have it
That's
like
great.
come up again.
That's great news.
Right.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's great news. If you apply to the city of LA, which it sounds like you did, then
Yeah.
there was going to be priority when you applied for the state. So it sounds like that actually manifested itself there, and you got a quick turnaround. And good, you know, it's great
Yeah.
news that you have gainful employment. And but all those questions you have are absolutely important. So I would encourage you to visit that page and read through the FAQs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Wendelin.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for all your answered questions. My question, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. How do I know or get my landlord to sign up for the rent relief? And will it affect me if they do not apply? The reason I ask is because my landlord reached out to me and asked what was going on. And I mentioned to her that I applied, and she said that there was nothing being processed on her end. Can they refuse to receive rent relief, or how do I go about this situation if they have not or have no idea that someone is going through the process of getting rent relief?
Okay, Gwendolyn, so you already applied to the rent relief program?
Correct.
Okay, so you've applied, and now the pendulum swings to the landlord to be able to complete their portion of the application. And this landlord is saying they haven't gotten any information, or are they just reluctant to participate?
I think both, but I know that in the past, once I did tell her that I had originally signed up for the ERAP program, the emergency
ERAP?
rental.
Yes.
And once I let them know about that one, then they moved forward and applied for it. But I'm not sure if this is a similar situation, or how do I go about like having them process that.
Okay, and again, I'm sorry, I have to ask, this is the city program or the state program?
This is the Housing is Key program. I believe it's a state.
Okay, yes, that's the state. Okay, well, I would encourage you to contact, now when you applied, were you assigned like a representative?
I was assigned a case ID. So I'm not, it's still pending. I haven't received an approval or denial. And I sent her that information, but I don't know if it was enough.
I understand. Okay, so similar to the gentleman that I spoke with before your question, I would encourage you to also call that 833-430-2122 number on the screen to pose these questions. I don't know the process of the state and what happens if a landlord is claiming they didn't get it. You know, is it as simple as like an email, improper email that was provided, and so the landlord's not getting it, or they did get it and they're reluctant to participate? And I don't know why that would be the case, because, or why that would be a motivation, because they won't be able to move forward with an unlawful detainer unless you prove that you've applied and that there's some status or continuum to what's going on with the application. And if it turns out that this application couldn't be completed because the landlord failed to participate, then that would only, I would imagine, come back to be a detriment to their particular case in the unlawful detainer hypothetical I'm given. So I don't know, maybe you want to check up and make sure the email address is correct and all contact number you gave, the contact information you gave for the landlord is accurate. And if it is, then I would encourage you to reach out to that website or to the phone number to understand procedurally what happens if the landlord doesn't, it either doesn't have the proper information, you didn't give them the proper information, or maybe you did and they're being reluctant to participate. What happens is, because that's going to impact it could potentially impact your housing and then just simply your state of your state of mind and being peace and enjoying your home. So these are all very good questions, but I'm going to defer to Housing is Key website and to the FAQs, and then that you reach out to that number on the screen for the state to pose these questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Helen Chang.
Hello, thank you for the
Hello.
webinar. I'm a landlord and I applied for the state program Housing is Key for rental assistance. So actually the site you gave us, housing2.lacity.org, is not where I go, right? For the status check. I need to check with the state, right? For the
Yes,
application.
the housing.
Right,
Yes,
right.
the housing 2 is the city.
Right.
You want to go to the bottom one. The Housing is Key, correct?
Right. The question I have is this. From last September till September of this year, my tenant paid 25% as obligated by the law. But now October, he refused to pay any rent at all whatsoever. So if I apply for the state program, the state emergency period is over, right? For the state, whereas the city, it is still on. So
Yes.
can I still get rental assistance for October from state program? Do you see what I'm saying? Like October, I'm not getting
Yes.
any. Yes.
Yes, I think it is for prospective. I think up to 3 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yes. So the answer is
So-
yes, you can.
So even state emergency is over because Los Angeles City still has the emergency going on. I could go ahead and get rental assistance for the next 3 months, and that'll be only 75% rather than 100%, right?
Oh, I see your question. Yes, I'm not sure. I mean, as far as answering the question about you applying for prospective rent, that
Right.
is yes. So I don't know if you have to if you amend your application. I'm not sure how the dashboard or the portal works for the state program,
Mhm.
but I would encourage you to reach out to them and say, okay, this is what happened in October. How do I apply for prospective rent? And I think there's an end cap.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say, like, since October, my tenant refused to pay any. Can I and still it is on the emergency? Can I still send him like pay or quit, or no, for not paying 25%?
Okay, so the 25% for October is not required.
Oh, it's not required.
No, that was under state law to avail yourself of permanent eviction protection. So you can't evict him ever for any of the rent he owed because he paid you the 25%.
Right.
I mean, you
right,
can't.
I understand. That.
And he gave you the declaration. So now you're saying,
No,
okay, I
he did
get
not.
that. Right.
he
So
did
now
not.
it's October. Right. So now
Right.
it's October,
Mhm.
but your property is in the city of Los Angeles, right?
Right. Mhm.
Right. So it's not just looking at the state law, it's looking at both state and local city law. So in the
Right.
city of LA, there is no 25% requirement. So he's not required to pay the 25%. If he can pay, if he can pay 100%, he should pay 100% because the rent is not forgiven. So one way or another, he's got to pay that amount, whether it's the rental assistance or through his own pocket. But
Right.
if he can't, so if he can, he should. All tenants that can should, because this is just debt that's accruing.
Right.
But if you cannot, you just cannot. He had
Mhm.
to go borrow that money, let's say, and he doesn't have a full-time job yet, and he cannot pay it. Then in the city of LA, if his reason why he can't pay is COVID impact, you can't move forward to evict. But how would you know that? So I suppose
Right.
procedurally, you could give a notice
Mhm.
and say, hey, you owe me full rent. And then he's going to turn around and tell you, hey, here's my declaration. I can't
Right.
pay you because I'm still COVID impacted. And then
Right.
at that point, you can't move forward.
I see.
I think it's an avenue you can certainly pursue to see if you can then get that rental assistance application amended to now
Right.
include an additional month of October and November, up until when that time frame expires, which I think it's no more than 18 months can the rental assistance be. So so please visit Housing is Key and the FAQ, or to that number, that toll-free number, to pose that question about amending a rental assistance application for future months.
So city does not require 25%. There's nothing that we, so, okay.
No, city does not require, correct.
Okay, what about like small claims court? Because like I filed a small claims court twice this year. Once I had the judgment for $10,000, but second time the judge would not give me the judgment because we were under the emergency declaration. So so now it's back the emergency. I mean, we still have emergency declaration, but can I still go ahead and file again at small claims court to get the judgment?
Yeah, so you're talking about another tenant now?
No, same tenant. He owe me like the 40,000 now.
I see. So there's a lot going on here. So you're not only are you waiting for rental assistance,
All right.
to come through for the state, but you're also pursuing the small claims.
Right.
And is the rental assistance that you're pursuing, or rather that you applied for time period that you're suing in small claims?
No, actually, I already sue at the filed claim, but I lost because the judge would not give me the judgment because we were under the emergency.
Right.
And he said he cannot make judgment when we were under the emergency period.
That's correct. Okay, so what state law allows is that landlords may, after November 1st, 2021,
I see.
you can pursue a small claims action after November 1st.
I see.
So I would just encourage you to seek legal assistance, because it sounds like there's two things going on there, right? Applying to the state for rental assistance to pay the debt that this person owes, but you're also pursuing small claims and getting a judgment against them that you could potentially get paid for from the state for rental assistance. So you definitely want to seek legal advice there on that one.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Cindy's iPhone.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening almost.
Hello.
Thank you, first of all, for this webinar. It's really, really informative. I think listening to some of the questions, I'm starting to understand kind of like what I was confused about. But I guess the deferment ended September 30th, 2021. But I guess I'm confused about that. Okay, the deferment ended the end of September. But the 25, I guess I get confused with you not being evicted if you paid the 25%, but then now after this September 30th deadline, you're not required. So I think I'm a little confused about that. If you can explain a bit.
Sure. So you're not, when you say you're not required, can you tell me what do you mean by that? You're not required to do what?
So no. So I guess just following through the webinar, I guess from what I understood is you're not required, like the tenant is not required to pay the 25%. Is that correct? Am I understanding?
Well, the tenant is in fact required to pay 100% at this point, right? Full rent. But if you live in the city of Los Angeles, our protections were actually in place and became law and were adopted before the state. So our protections are grandfathered in, and our protections do not require payment of 25% to be temporarily protected. So if you live in the city of LA and you still have not, gotten full-time employment salary, a paycheck and, money coming in, and you can't pay that full rent because you're still dealing with the aftermath of like of COVID, right? Or you're caring for somebody who's sick, etc. I mean, the LAMC is very specific of what falls under COVID impact. And it's not just losing your job. It could be that you're caring for someone and they're COVID impacted, and now you've got all these medical expenses or childcare expenses, etc. So if you can't pay and you can prove this, right? Then the city of LA's municipal code says that the landlord cannot move forward to evict you if you, tenant, cannot pay because you're still COVID impacted. That's what the city of LA says. Nowhere in the city of LA did it ever say that you have to pay 25%. If you can pay, you should pay 100% of your rent, because that debt is just adding up. If you can't pay because you're COVID impacted, then you're strongly encouraged to go to Housing is Key and apply for rental assistance, right? Because if you're COVID impacted, I want to believe you likely are eligible for rental assistance. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but logic would say that you are probably eligible. So you should apply to Housing is Key to get that rental assistance to help you pay the landlord. So I don't know if the confusion is state law. Okay, so 25% was state law. State law said, hey, tenant, if you can pay 25% of rent owed between September 1st of 2020 through September 30th of 2021, and you give declarations to the landlord every month, then the landlord cannot move to evict you. They might sue you in civil court, or they might sue you in small claims court to go get that balance. But remember, at the same time, you have an opportunity to apply for Housing is Key. So if you're eligible, that assistance is going to come in and hopefully pay 100%, and you don't have to worry about it. But now that September 30th has lapsed and we're in October, the 25% requirement for the state has expired, and you should pay 100% if you can. But if you cannot, then you are protected under the city protections, where the landlord shouldn't move forward. If they do move forward, then you tenant and your lawyer should utilize our LAMC as an affirmative defense to explain to the court that these additional protections, that you can avail yourselves of these protections, while the rental assistance application is being analyzed, for that money to come in and hopefully would wipe out any of that owed debt to the landlord.
Okay. I understood now. I guess that's what I was confused about, the LA city ordinance and then the state law. So it was the state law that said through the time period up until the end of September, if you could pay the 25%, you should. And if you did pay at least the 25%, then they can't, the landlord can't evict you.
Right. The landlord shouldn't be able to move forward with an unlawful detainer, right? An unlawful detainer is ultimately to get you out of the unit, for the landlord to regain possession. So that couldn't be an option for the landlord. If the tenant paid the 25% and gave their declarations, the landlord could not move to get you out of your unit. They may sue you to try and collect the debt you owe, but at least you have the safety, and the peace of mind that you're in your sanctuary, you're in your home, you're safe from eviction.
Okay. So if let's say during that period you weren't able to pay the 25%, then you're not protected against the eviction under the state law. But
under
the LA
state
city
law,
yes,
correct.
But under the LA
correct.
city ordinance, you are protected.
You are correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay, so
So
that
if the
is
landlord
exactly
wants to pursue it, because they say, I don't care about LAMC, I'm going under state law, you didn't pay me, they can certainly do that, and that's their right, and they can file a lawful detainer. And then the tenant is going to utilize our city protections, our LAMC city protections that were grandfathered and were law before the state law became into effect, as an affirmative defense, so that the court understands that the tenant has these extra protections under city ordinance.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
understand. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, next up we have Jill.
Thank you. That's very informative. I'm very grateful for everyone on the call and their questions, and your informative answers have answered a few of my questions already. I live in the city of Los Angeles, and I was impacted in March of 2020, but I was able to pay my rent up until October. I started paying half for a couple of months, and then I went to 25%. And I was in the ERAP program, and the landlord, I helped my landlord with their documents. I uploaded many documents and was approved, and the landlord got funds, which I'm very grateful for that as well. And then the 1st of September, I was told, prior to that, the end of August, was that there was no money, nothing, I needed to go to Housing is Key. I did that. I filled out the application September 1st, and I've been in a holding pattern with them for a while. It's just under review. And I know you're probably going to say, well, I need to call them and check with them. But I'm just, since I was in the city of Los Angeles to start with, do they take priority over that, or not necessarily priority, but am I grandfathered into the program and I can kind of expect that they will pick up where the other one left off? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Yes, that's our understanding, is that there will be priority to applicants of the ARUP under the city program.
Right.
Yes, and that's because we've already done that. We've done the legwork, we've done the review, and if you were approved, then the need is great, and so we've done a lot of that legwork to review the documentation. So that's a definite yes. There is a priority in place for Angelinos that applied to the ARUP program.
Okay, and the ARUP sounds funny the way it says, the ERAP program isn't funding anymore, right? That's true. They're telling people to go to Housing is Key. That program is no longer issuing funds.
That's right.
Okay, and then
that's correct.
I have two quick things. Is there a way? My landlords have been very, they're a little tired of it, and so is everybody else. But they're not threatening me with eviction or anything. And I've been giving them the declaration every month and giving them what I can. And they are Spanish speakers. And is there a webinar that I can maybe coming up, or something that I can have them listen to or give them information? I've told them to go to Housing is Key and fill out their portion of the application. And I said, you don't have to. My reading the information said, it's not 100% necessary for this to go through if the landlord doesn't participate. They would just maybe send the check to me and I would pay them, of course. But and that's probably a question for Housing is Key.
Well, Housing is Key is multilingual, and then you can go to the Stay Housed webinar. Let's see, Housing is Key. Where's the Stay Housed? Here. Stay Housed, there it is. stayhoused.la.org.
Okay.
You can go to that webinar, and that's also multilingual. And so they have webinars, and they can pose questions. And there's also legal clinics in Spanish if the landlord chooses to, set up some time. And they're all throughout the day, all throughout the week. So if it doesn't work with their schedule in the mornings, there's evening ones. We will be hosting our final October webinar on the 27th in Spanish.
On the 27th?
October 27th, yes,
Right.
Next Wednesday. It will be at 3 p.m. and there'll be a Zoom link sent out. So if you're interested, I encourage you to go to our website and have the landlord register for that Spanish webinar. So Stay Housed LA, Housing is Key multilingual. You have Stay Housed LA that does Spanish webinars, and you have our webinar next week in Spanish.
Okay, and that's the stayhousedla.org.
Yes, stayhousedla.org for webinars or legal clinics.
Okay, very good. I again appreciate all the information and the patience you have and answering my questions. And I got a lot of information from the people that have already asked questions, so I won't take up much more of your time, but just thank you. And I guess the funds come right on time when they arrive.
Yes.
Is what I'm hoping for. All right, dear. Thank you.
That's what we're hoping to. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and I believe that we do have time for one more question. Rudy, if you could please unmute.
Yes, thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so here's the question that I have here. My landlord gave me a 60-day notice because my lease is expiring at the end of October. So all of us might benefit from this by knowing if that 60-day expires, he still has to file an unlawful detainer and go through that process. He just can't come in and start shutting me down right on November 1st. He has to then file an unlawful detainer and get a summons. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's
Any other
great.
measures? Yes, any other measures would be an illegal lockout. And if that were to happen, then I'd encourage you to contact, you are in the city of Los Angeles?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I encourage you to contact I hope that doesn't happen, but if it does,
Yeah.
it would be a enormous violation of your rights. So contact the department, and then we can initiate an investigation and,
Okay.
contact your mayor, your
right,
local LAPD, etc.
That's great. And part B real quick, and I think it may have got chatted in here. The no fault characterization. This is a 2-year lease that just has run its course. It expires at the end of the month, and that's the reason that's on the 60-day notice. It's termination, or that's expiring naturally. Is there a wiggle room in there for the landlord to still evict me, or is that a no fault? And could I defend that in court by saying I'm protected under the LA City continuation efforts here for no fault evictions?
Okay, and that is you live in a rent stabilized unit?
No, it's it's a freestanding house.
It's a single family home. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, from the landlord's perspective, what I have seen as an investigator when I review cases, it's their landlords are advised by their counsel that this is not an eviction. It is just an expiration of a lease. However, in the city, there is no fault eviction protections. And what's interesting is that it's a circular analysis to how it is that the landlord's going to move forward to evict you if you don't leave, right? So as you answered your question in the first part of your question was, do they have to file an unlawful detainer? Yes. So what is the basis of that unlawful detainer is my question. And so I'm sort of just posing the question as an inference that there may be room there from an investigative standpoint, and we would like to see it if you have not found a place and you choose not to leave.
Okay. Yeah, it's not rent money related. This is strictly a lease is expiring. It's a very clean cut, which kind of scares me. It's not a lease tied to money situation. It's just expired.
Right, but the protections, the City of LA protections, the COVID impact is in the rent payment, and then any unauthorized occupant or nuisance or pets that have to live that are in the unit because of COVID impact. The no fault eviction is a blanket stay right now, if you will. It's a blanket freeze during the local emergency period. So if you choose, you can file a complaint with our department. We will look at it. We typically do not look at or address any issues concerning units that are not rent stabilized, but during this time frame, typically we wouldn't. But because the local emergency period is still in place and risk of displacement is still alive and well, we are reviewing these type of notices.
Okay.
So if you've made arrangements to move and you're willing to do that and you found a place, great, and good luck to you. And if you're not ready to move or you can't because you haven't found a place and you want to have this notice reviewed, I would certainly encourage you to file a complaint, and the sooner the better. You don't want to run too close to the expiration.
To the expiration of the notice?
Of the lease.
Of the lease. Okay. All right. So for right now, you're saying it looks like it could be a no fault. It could be defensible per se. And if it could. Does, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it could be.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So if I reached out to your LAHD, this is kind of a hot emergency call here. Maybe I have that conversation like tomorrow, right? Is what you're saying?
Yes. So call that 1-800. Yes. Yeah. Call that 1-866-557 7368 that's on the screen. You could also do it online tonight if you have time.
You
And
said,
then,
okay,
yeah, it's on the screen.
okay, very good.
Yeah, it's that second link, and then that 1-866
Yeah, I got it.
557-7368. Yeah, or you could do it online, and then you will get a complaint. We'll ask you to upload your documents, and then an investigator will be calling you
Beautiful.
to begin a conversation about it. Mhm.
Yeah, great. Well, the good work. I share everybody's thoughts. You guys do a great job. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rudy. Okay, so I think that wraps up our webinar. We will have another, or rather our final webinar series is in Spanish on the 27th at 3 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And if you have any questions, again, please call our hotline. We're here to serve. Have a great, great evening. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.